gonna sound, again, racist, but...
Then don't say it. You're missing the point of all of this.
Things haven't changed.
Yeah, it's changed. It's gotten worse.
It's interesting to watch the show now and to be like, oh, literally everyone was living in New York, and then they just like flew Julie in from Alabama and like dropped her in.
That was messed up, wasn't it?
I mean, about as messed up as only sending the girls to Jamaica, not the guys. But
that was messed up.
So tell me about sort of like what your experience was, and like, was that good for you to be dropped in? Like, did you have friends that, you know, were these like your built-in friends that could sort of show you around the city, or what was that like for you?
I'm not trying to be like dramatic, but it's kind of like winning the lottery. Cause I mean, think about it. Like, I move in and I get to be roommates with Heather B. Like, who does that happen to? You know, I mean, she had a gold album. You know, I move in and Kevin is teaching at NYU and, you know, writing for Rolling Stone. Like, that doesn't happen. I get to go see Andre perform in New York. Like, Norman was designing for the Guggenheim.
Yeah.
So I landed with these people who were pretty established, or, you know, it wasn't a big risk that MTV took with these talented people. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like they had really put it out there. They picked really attractive, smart, talented people. And then I got to come live with them, is how I looked at it. You know, it was great for me. Yeah, I loved it.
I mean, the other thing that's interesting now watching the show is that you guys were all holding down jobs. Like, they make a big deal in the show of Kevin, you not being there a lot, but like, you guys were all working, you know what I mean? Right. Like,
well, and back then that was also like, complicated. Like, they didn't really, like, I was trying to audition for stuff and people would be like, yeah, you can't bring cameras in to an audition. You know, like, that wasn't the norm. And it was these huge cameras, you know, like,
with long cords.
Yeah, big boom mics. Like, it wasn't, you couldn't do that.
Like, what was that like? Because, you know, we never followed you to the office or stuff
right.
like that. You know, we didn't see you doing work.
I mean, I felt like it was a secret. You know, people would see cameras every now and then. They'd like, what is that? But I didn't really, were we allowed to tell people we're doing a reality? Do y'all remember, Julie?
It was a little touch and go, but like, we did go and like, we got to see you go and teach at NYU. And,
that's right. Yeah.
But no, I mean, also you have to think like some restaurants didn't want us to come in.
Yeah.
It was a very different environment for just this sort of thing.
Yeah, reality. I mean, there was no reality TV. That we were it. So, I mean, if anything, we would just tell people, you know, we're shooting a documentary. And, you know, at the time, they'd be like, no one watches documentaries, so who cares? You know, like, go ahead, shoot away. You know, I don't think it was that. It wasn't like interference or anything. You know, no one really put up any roadblocks about it.
It's sort of interesting to think about now. You know, the show being on 28 years ago or whatever. Like, there are people that are on reality TV now that have grown up their whole lives not knowing that reality TV like wasn't a thing. And knowing what, if you get cast on a show, like what you have to, like what you're supposed to bring to that show, you know what I mean? And like how that's such an interesting phenomenon now versus you guys were just like, oh, we're just like, you're going to pay me to like, I get to live here for free. And you're just
exactly,
you know, and you guys didn't get paid very much. This is the other.
No,
we didn't. You picked up on that too.
That was difficult. I mean, I'm just going to say, I will go on the record and say, you know, that was difficult being on, you know, millions of television shows and not having the bank account to speak for it. You know, it was a difficult, especially going off the air. It was a, you know, and having to, you know, deal with people that wanted to talk about MTV, wanted to talk about how they could get on MTV, and I'll even go further, complaining to me that they don't show music on MTV anymore. Like I can have something to do with that. You know, I can't tell you how many people want to, you know, sort of bring that up to me that, you know, they don't show music on MTV anymore. I'm like, yeah, what, you know, what do you want me to do about it? I mean, like, so it was difficult to, you know, be so visible yet not have any sort of compensation to show for it.
I was going to ask, related to that, like, how did it affect the career of Reigndance? Like, did people take your band more seriously, less seriously?
The awareness was really good, but I don't think it really, the music, the business side, they didn't really care for it because we didn't go about the normal channels. You know, So in many instances we were treated much harsher from, reviewers. The gatekeepers were not kind to us for going about it in a abnormal way. And personally, it wasn't great for us personally. So that was tough to deal with. Fortunately, we're still friends, many years later, but it wasn't the best vehicle for music at the time to be involved in this show. It wasn't a great vehicle to, as Kevin mentioned, Nirvana was the ruling. They were really at the top of their game at that time, and they were so anti-establishment, so anti-corporate, and that was the ethos at the time. Anything having to do with something so established was not cool. We did not earn any punk rock points being involved on a soap opera style MTV show, and it wasn't. It wasn't great for us.
Watching the show now, it's like so glaringly obvious that like a lot of the stuff you were saying about race, about Indigenous people, about like the falsity of the idea of the melting pot is very true. But like, I don't know if America was ready to receive that at the time. How do you feel sort of like then versus now about like how you were received on the show?
It was heavy. You know what I mean? I got a lot of support, but then I got a lot of ugliness. And honestly, I actually still get some ugliness from people who are, because keep in mind, the show aired in 92, but it's been shown many times since then. So periodically, when I can tell when the show's on, because the original 13 episodes, folks will be cursing me out on social media all over again. Like, F you, Kevin, and crazy racist stuff, I was just speaking for what I knew. I had been in college already for 4 years. I was very involved as a youth activist, student leader in college. And so racism was something that I thought about very seriously. How I've evolved is, I certainly am not going to yell and scream and curse at people the way I did back then as a young person who was hot-headed in a very serious way. But I still am very passionate about ending racism. And obviously Black Lives Matter has exploded and shown us that we still have a lot of work to do in our country. And I'm glad and I'm proud of the fact, regardless of where people land on the spectrum, that the show, our season actually highlighted some major social issues in our country, not just racism, but also homelessness, also homophobia, and what Norman had to deal with, and I think it's really profound because you can see things that have shifted and changed. First Black president of the United States, Barack Obama, 2008, his election. But George Floyd gets kneed to death in Minnesota, and we're still dealing with that harsh reality of him and Breonna Taylor. And so, I've had a lot of people apologize to me through the years. I'm not talking about my cast, but I'm talking about people all backgrounds. They've said I never thought about racism until I watched this show. I've never heard conversations like that, and I actually think that, some of those conversations actually have turned out to be, or arguments have turned out to be iconic. They're things that people still bring up. And I don't even think it's so much like, it's not even so much like, Kevin or Julie was right, but like that had a profound effect on me as a 12-year-old, as a 13-year-old, as a 15-year-old, no matter what race they were. Because think about it, where had you ever seen any conversations like that about race before our season of Real World? Honestly, no, we're not on TV, not on TV like that. So I think that's what also makes the show iconic. But I also think what's going to make it more iconic are these new episodes where you see how we've evolved and how we relate to each other now, all these years later.
People leave, you can go through breakups, but your friends are always there.